Good morning. I'm out here in the desert right now looking for some pronghorn to photograph for another video that I'm working on right now. I had a wonderful morning with some this morning. I was able to find some. It was a very brief encounter, but it was great. The light was absolutely stunning. Pronghorn are just such beautiful animals to photograph and observe. And I'm out in this gorgeous landscape. So it was just a wonderful morning that I had. It's not even that late in the morning, but the light is already very, very harsh. As a wildlife photographer, that's something that I'm constantly considering and thinking about, is how best to use the light that I have to work with to create a fun image. No matter what type of photography you enjoy or what type of camera you use, light is key. It's probably the most important factor to photography. But light can't always be perfect, and more often than not, it isn't. So in this week's video, I wanted to go over some scenarios, some things that you can do to get some fun and creative images when the light is not perfect, when the light is not ideal. Each of these scenarios that I'll run through, I'll show you the results that I got. These are all scenarios that I've actually encountered. And like I say, I'll show you the results that I got from each scenario. But first things first, let's go find somewhere to hole up for the day. Let's find some shelter from the sun because it is beating down on me. So I found this nice cozy cave here. It's actually quite cool in here. It feels so good to be out of that blaring sun. So I'll hole up here for the day. I checked for rattlesnakes, so I should be good. So one of the main rules to photography is to always keep the sun at your back when you're photographing a subject. And what this allows is the subject that you're photographing will be very well illuminated. You'll have nice even light on it, and it just makes a beautiful, beautiful image. I've actually met some people that will skip over an opportunity or a scenario. They won't photograph an animal or a landscape if they can't get into a position where the sun is at their back. And I just think to myself, how many opportunities they're missing out on by doing that. I've also met people who will take a picture no matter what the light is, and then they'll go on later and just Photoshop it to death to get it to look exactly how they want it. And again, I just think to myself how many opportunities they're missing, opportunities to stretch their creativity by analyzing the light that they have to work with and using that to come up with a fun or creative image. And so that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. My first thing that I wanted to talk about is these scenarios where you can't get the sun behind you when you're dealing with backlight or side light. I recently was able to photograph a red fox den, and this den was very different than what I'm used to photographing in that it was located in the middle of a field in the middle of town. So it was great, very convenient to access and photograph these foxes. But at the same time, because of its location, there was really only one direction to photograph the den from. So rather than worry about that harsh backlight during peak times, got a bug up here, rather than worry about that harsh backlight that I had to work with, I used that opportunity to really think about how I could stretch my creativity to come up with some fun images. So anytime you're using backlight, it's really good at accentuating different things in a photo. For instance, if there's an animal kicking up dust or something, that backlight will really make that pop in an image. It really accentuates that. Also, if you've got an animal breathing on a frosty morning, it really helps accentuate that breath coming out of its mouth. It can outline an animal by making the outer hairs on its coat really just glow. So there's a lot that you can use backlight for. So in the scenario with the red foxes, I used that backlight to highlight and outline the little kits, their fur, to get a little outline around them to glow as they went about playing and causing a ruckus. And it was just a great opportunity again to use that backlight to accentuate those foxes, to outline them, and it was just really fun to do that. And also when I was shooting video, I used that backlight to help accentuate some of the dust that they would kick up as they were playing, and it was just a great opportunity to utilize that backlight. So again, backlight and sidelight can be really good to use to accentuate those different points in an image, and it's something I highly recommend that you use. Along those same lines, let's talk for a minute about silhouettes. I personally love getting out into nature long before the sun has risen and long after it's set. These are times when I've heard a lot of people say that there just isn't enough light to get a decent image. I personally disagree with that. I love getting out into these times and looking for opportunities to photograph silhouettes of wildlife or landscape features, different things like that. The nice thing about silhouettes is you don't need all that light in order to capture all the detail in the eye of an animal or its fur or feathers or whatever it is. The goal behind a silhouette is just to capture the outline of a subject contrasted against its background. So silhouettes are really nice types of images, things that you can add into an image during times when there's really not a whole lot of light to work with. And so that's something that I really like to work with during those darker hours of the day, or even on just an extremely cloudy day or something. It's something that you can add into an image that really spices it up a bit. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to photograph a northern flicker nest. That was one of the very first videos that I put out on YouTube, so go check it out and try not to cringe too bad when you watch it. But it was just fun to photograph that nest of little woodpeckers there. That nest was really cool though, because the location that it was in, the little grove of trees that nest was in, was pretty much the last place in the forest to be illuminated by the sun as it was coming up. And the hill behind it was pretty much the first place that would get lit up by the sun. So the location that I would sit in to photograph that nest, that hill behind would always be illuminated first and then the nest later. So it was a really good opportunity to outline those birds peeking their heads out of the nest in more of a silhouette type image with a little bit color to the background as that sun would rise and illuminate that hill behind. It was just a really cool opportunity to photograph. So again, silhouettes are things that I always look for personally when I'm out in nature, things to add to an image to spice it up a little bit more. All right, let's talk for a minute about highlights. This is the tip in this video that I've been looking forward to the most. As one who loves getting out into nature and finding wildlife to photograph in deep forests and moody weather, I'm always looking for highlights to utilize in my photography. So what do I mean by a highlight? In this scenario, it's anytime you can find an animal or whatever your subject is that's covered in shadow, all but a portion of its body. Generally the face is what I look for. So a few years ago I was backpacking in some mountains and I came across a great owl. He was hunting in this beautiful mountain meadow and I was able to photograph him as he went about catching prey and eating and whatnot. After a while, he flew into this really thick grove of trees. So I quietly followed him into the trees and was able to find him perched on this tree. And I noticed that he was almost being highlighted by the sun. And if the sun continued on its path in just a little bit, he would be highlighted. So I waited patiently there, just hoping he would stay put long enough for me to get my image. And sure enough, he did. And pretty soon that sun was highlighting a portion of his face. I was able to get an image of him highlighted like that, and then I snuck quietly out of the area and left him in peace. And that is just one of my favorite images that I've ever taken, I think. Just the moodiness of the image is just, I don't know, beautiful animal, beautiful scenario, and it was just magnificent. So anytime I can utilize highlights in my imagery, I do so as much as possible. Again, they're great for adding a certain mood to an image or a certain sense of wilderness or enchantment to an image, and they are just great. Anytime you can utilize highlights in your photography, I highly recommend that you do so. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, light is everything when it comes to photography, but too many people mistake that as perfect light is everything in photography. Don't fall into that trap. Utilize whatever light you have available to work with, use that creativity, and come away from each scenario with some fun and creative images. I hope you guys have enjoyed this week's video. I would love to hear from you. What are some things that you do when the light is not perfect, when it's not ideal out there? What are some techniques that you use to spice up your images and utilize the light that you have to work with? Let me know down in the comments. I know a lot of the viewers read through those comments to learn from you, so please don't be shy, don't hold back. Let us know what you think down in the comments. Let us know your tips, techniques, all that stuff down in the comments. I love learning from you guys. I appreciate all the constant support. If you guys did enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Consider sharing it around. That helps the channel out so much. That helps me out. I appreciate all the constant support. I really do. Thank you so much, you guys. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next week.